When we think of the name of Marvel, we think of various mixed feelings that come with it. In today's day and age, it's been a mostly negative path for its continued existence, with movies and television shows that are not up to quality, that fits more of an image that Martin Scorsese once said was just popcorn theme park movies. And for the most part, that is just simply the case for both better and the worst parts of Marvel since Disney bought them back in 2009. Yet even though we have very strong negative opinions about their output currently on the big mess of the multiverse era that they have tried to create, no one can still deny its overall massive impact on popular culture, at least one that many find understandable than to how Avatar can create $2 billion films at least. Where no matter what we think about the new projects not getting people excited anymore, or just clunky messes in general, these films still brought us all together like the Avengers did, where we saw groups of remarkable people fight and become the best of friends in the darkest of times to create some form of hope that there's always a better tomorrow when we work as a team, which is what happened back in 2012 with the original Avengers movie, the film that really made the MCU and the superhero films to what they are today, the culmination of modern cinema that brings people together in what theaters actually mean. And this is what I really want to discuss today, with the impact of such a story and why it remains so perfect. For over the past decade, the discussion on Marvel on sites like this are more to criticize their recent projects, and are hardly ever to remind what came from before, or just mentioning it here and there and comparing it to those modern counterparts. Something I just feel needs to be revisited as a whole, because there are glimmers of hope in the recent films that harken back to this film's great meaning and what we need to remind ourselves why we loved this in the first place. How we got to the point of them making a full cinematic universe. Because other than this, we just had other Marvel films like the X-Men films here and there that never really caught on worldwide, and Marvel wasn't really in the biggest of states before Disney came along. The beginnings of the MCU just started along the lines of most Marvel characters being individual heroes that could take place in their own separate pocket universes, or so it would seem, until the multiverse proved that they're all within the same walls of each other. Just a simpler time of characters learning their unique abilities in such a realistic way. Or kinda. Starting with Iron Man, we had the world simply enter with a billionaire genius changing his ways to become a hero after those in his company would use his weapons for terror or profit, and being better for the sake of that world that needed help. This all culminated in the after credit scene where Nick Fury appeared to talk to him about the Avengers initiative, showcasing their greater plans for a universe we did not even know was yet to exist. The plans that were announced at this time was to have Tony Stark and other planned heroes to team up by 2011, with the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, and Thor being released. Each film included more heroes on their side who showed their own worth, with newer characters discovering their abilities before taking a history lesson, with the very first Avenger being Captain America and his exploits of World War II before waking up 70 years later to the new modern times and this new mission. Where the beauty of all this again was the fact that they were also separate while also contained within the same universe of each other, with characters appearing here and there that would elevate themselves in a bigger and better project. People we don't know would work together but do in a group known as the Avengers. And the Avengers was the entire goal of all of this, even before films like Captain America was released, because people like Kevin Feige were aiming to get these individual films made to get people used to a scientific realistic idea of having Norse gods or metal men together in a Bible setting that superheroes are known for. Which is best because you know what you're getting into with a bunch of people with different powers and the attitudes they have that would never really get along at first, but then actually become friends at the end, because that's how it works. And that's what resulted in absolute perfection, getting numerous awards and the biggest box office to date at the time of its release. A film that works so well even on its own, and even more with its individual predecessors that showed how well a shared cinematic universe can work when the time is right. The best of its time when we favored the comedy of Joss Whedon and the talents of its cast from Robert Downey Jr. to Tom Hiddleston with the villainous Loki, whose role in this film certainly has shaped the best of what the MCU does to this date, with the character and his own burdens that we know of today. And we will discuss those parts a bit later, to the point where we will highlight the reason why the Avengers works so well and why it still is the best formula for a superhero film when others like DC failed and just had to restart, and Marvel today is just trying to find a new footing, but also failing because of the effects of this film. Not the ones that are bad, but how they abuse those effects, like the comedy, removing the greatness of what really worked so well. But let's go back to the start of everything here. The beginning of the Avengers movie itself, where they set the scene when Loki gets delivered the Mind Stone and the Scepter by a character known as the Other, a servant of Thanos who gets eventually killed 2 years later, where it is given to retrieve the Tesseract from the human hands. The intro dialogue reveals a high arrogance of having those like Loki dispatch the Chitauri to conquer Earth and the feeble humans who harbor the Tesseract, which has powers they know little of, which was later known to harbor the Space Stone itself. One that such happens to be in the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D. as future films or previous stories in this case would have shown. In this way, the movie gets you to introduce its main cast of characters in a way that is easily accessible to understand, not having previous films that are more of a bonus to actually point it out. An example of this is having Nick Fury and Phil Coulson show up here in the beginning part of the film to be involved since they were there since Iron Man with the help of Clint Barton and Eric Selvig, who were both introduced in Thor, alongside of course the surprise arrival of Loki himself because of the Tesseract, which I have to say is a very effective introduction with how he's set up, looking like a regular man but with extraordinary powers that you didn't need to see in other films like Thor, where you can see this unknown threat appear, which, going back to the previous film, was actually teased in some way to have low-key influence the others, where it just works to show how this was the main event, the film they wanted everyone to see, because that is the true beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, they make his introduction a great way to showcase the powerful threat that they are dealing with, having him manage to control those like Barton and Selvig within seconds while stealing the Tesseract out of their hands, making things desperate in order for the heroes to get into the picture. Just like having Natasha Romanoff appear, who was first shown in the second Iron Man film with Nick Fury and co helping Stark out, and seeing her on the job before dealing with some bad guys before she's informed of the news of her friend Clint and tasked to find Bruce Banner, who was played by Mark Ruffalo. Of course, mentioning this because the original plan was involving Edward Norton in the role since he actually started in The Incredible Hulk after Iron Man was released, where sadly they couldn't actually work out a deal for him to return, so they got Mark Ruffalo casted as he was first considered, but one that showed that it worked to no problem because of how this film seeked to show it could be enjoyed as its own thing that everyone wanted to see while simultaneously following every production beforehand, which now is something Marvel has become good at ever since Iron Man 2, with Don Cheadle stepping in the role as War Machine, which actually worked out better in the end knowing someone like Terrence Howard among other things of the actors, where this film does treat events previously shown or even deleted from the Hulk intact, and also as recent as Captain America Brave New World, with returning characters like Betty Ross, played by Liv Tyler, appearing to see her father Thunderbolt Ross, who is now played at the time by Harrison Ford. Another recasting since William Hurt had passed away a few years prior, who also reappeared starting in Captain America's Civil War when he was alive. And of course, lastly, having Tim Roth reappear since the events of The Incredible Hulk as the Abomination in the show She-Hulk, as we all get to know, where the Avengers showed in its own way how you can accept that a character is the same one others knew before, with their history, with the way they play it, and how they write them into the story, where it's something we can appreciate about this film, knowing the bigger film's picture in a larger chain, allowing it to be accepted even if we don't agree with all the recasting decisions they have done over the years. But what we see here again is just the wider picture of Nick Fury trying to form a team of superheroes, from an initiative that was thought to be a dud, where the Council wanted to make their own weapons from the Tesseract as a deterrence from such threats for their own protection or gain, considering what we find out later. Where of course we're speaking obviously about Hydra's hidden control that lays up the introduction of Steve Rogers in this film, who from his perspective is only coming a few days off of the end of World War II, stopping Hydra and the Tesseract that is shown in brief flashbacks. That in order for society to have new hope, we have to pull the past with Captain America to inspire new people that there are heroes among them in an ever-growing universe interested in this one singular planet, getting him back into the world to save it. And finally, but not last as of now, is where we end with the hero that everyone knows at this point being Iron Man himself, where you can feel that his introduction in this point of the film is how he's the most known out of all the bunch, considering that his own film started all of this and his personal reputation that people knew regarding him inside and outside of the film. He's the one that's kind of the most disconnected from the team since he is a billionaire working on his own projects for the good of humanity, rather than what he was introduced or offered with a secret governmental organization like S.H.I.E.L.D., not trusting until his partner Pepper Potts presses him to do so and learn about these new heroes and what Loki is doing. Virtually, this is the scene that gets him caught up on all the events and films that happened up to this point, delivering them together with the awkward meetings of Steve and Banner and Natasha on the Helicarrier that shows their enormous power that they have secretly. This is all done in the early film stages, with the focus being on the first confrontation with Loki, who needed the mind-controlled crew to steal Iridium to stabilize the Tesseract, while he personally lays out his plan for humanity to be ruled, his desire to become king that is baked into his character's burden with glorious purpose, which as we know, means so much more with the development that Loki went through. That looking through the lens helps us understand us more about why he acts this way and why he needs to be a villain here, since he never felt that decent connection being raised by those like Odin and passed over the rule to his brother Thor when he thought he could. But at the same time, you get people who know men like him who are willing to stand up if it means they're right, where those like Steve come in to stop him with a blazing reintroduction of Iron Man to come in and settle more conflict with Steve as we know their relationship now. That we see the Avengers form in this sort of weird way where they don't exactly trust each other but are trying to start going through it. This also serves as the team's final introduction with Thor into the picture, who grabs Loki from S.H.I.E.L.D's hands from where they have to fight him for it, going personally with Loki himself about his grievances, not actually being brothers but how he cares and doesn't understand why he's doing this, what these feelings are, and what his plans are really. It's these kinds of moments that makes Marvel interesting and stuff that other films sorely lack, with the inherent focus on the comedic aspect or the non-trivial stuff that explains nothing like this film could have done with the balance it had to fit the characters to their development, like how Iron Man treats Thor and how Steve treats them all with respect as a leader and trying to get them together. It's a scene where we act on each of their own strengths and greater weaknesses, with Loki in the picture whose own personal interest shows he knows how to exploit them, seeing things like Banner on board. This is the moment where we finally have almost all of them together on the Helicarrier, with of course Hawkeye still under Loki's control, and the plan to free him, where it's more about showing how fragile such teams can be, or showing how hard it is to even form since the Avengers initiative was put on the back burner before the events of this very film. It's about their conflicting relationship that matters the most to this film, and what I consider to be the backbone of the entire movie. More so than the entire end fight where they are all together in the final act, because it shows a reality that exists amongst all people, whether they be humans or gods. We find ourselves constantly in disagreement with those we have to get to know, whether it be in politics, sports, or other things, but how we all come together when the moment matters. Just like how this is all of them first knowing of the truth of what S.H.I.E.L.D. was making, the weapons of mass destruction from the Tesseract, with their own values at play and personalities that clash in what they personally believe in. And this is something Loki knows best when Natasha tries to play him based on her information about Barton that he knows himself and he knows how to play, showcasing his own knowledge of what S.H.I.E.L.D. is doing and their own cover-ups about her dark past.
You lie and kill in the service of liars and killers. You pretend to be separate, to have your own code, something that makes up for the horrors, but they are part of you.
It's a clever situation that shows that the villain knows more about who the heroes are, while also the counterintelligence of those like Natasha to find out what he seeks to release with the Hulk on board without directly saying that, which unfortunately comes true later after their own bitter arguments. The clash of what Tony and Steve believe in and what S.H.I.E.L.D. is trying to do to defend their actions. Exactly what he wants when Barton comes back and the chaos is shown. Or just in general, Loki is one of the better villains of the MCU for all of these reasons, knowing what is to come and personally pointing out the faults inside people, because that's what he has too in his own self, as his own series showed.
Ooh. It burns you to have come so close. To have the Tesseract, to have power, unlimited power, and then to be reminded what real power is.
He knows S.H.I.E.L.D. seeks power, as in the real power of subjugation on their own means, because that's what he currently wants. He knows the bad things, and that is exactly what is discussed between Steve and Tony later on in the film before they fight in New York.
I'm not marching the Fury's fight. Neither am I. He's got the same blood on his hands that Loki does.
A sort of validation on his end that the others simply can't provide, which is seen easy to exploit when the explosion causes them to act fast, still coming fresh off their arguments and having the Hulk unleash so he can free himself in the chaotic process. The fight that further fractures the entire team that hasn't even formed yet, but also unifying them at the same time with the death of those like Phil Coulson who believed in them and their idea, with Hawkeye back under his own control, to settle in the purpose of the Avengers and what it means to fight despite all the shortcomings of what their true purposes really are. It's tragedy that makes the Avengers who they are, with the deaths or torment of others when they come back. Their grief and their sadness of losing those they love or fighting means something more than that, where the meaning of avenging is exactly to fight back against those who wronged us or those we've lost, to come back stronger when defeat enters our lives, as they've learned through Nick Fury's push and Hawkeye's own mind control. This results in creating the impactful scene of Thor lifting his hammer, all of them suiting up with Alan Silvestri's score to lead them to stop Loki once and for all, culminating in that conversation that Tony has with Loki before it begins.
Because if we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn well sure we'll avenge it.
Where this is the moment that makes the entire film, with the greatest hero of all time stating that what has to be done in the darkest of times, or the invasion of New York coming up where many can lose their lives and millions of damages are costed, the role of the hero here is to do their best to try to save or ultimately fight back against the oppressing force, to avenge what was lost. And the final act really sets up the reality of heroes fighting together and exactly appearing in our society, where damage is going to be done that is going to be questioned at the end and in continuous movies, but it's just how it's the simple cause of being what an Avenger is really about. If you can't save something, you might as well avenge it, and that's what we've seen from them do from movie to movie, from this one to Avengers Endgame itself that brought everyone back, where chaos and destruction is the element that brings them together when normally everyone would flee from it. Just like how they first argued when it's about the bigger picture rather than themselves that count in this iconic rotating shot of them surrounded by the Chitauri, which also followed another iconic shot beforehand with Banner saying he's always angry, letting the Hulk out on his own accord. These two scenes prove no matter what happens, we stand together to help avenge our fellow man despite the costs, like Captain's actions inspiring other cops to help in a short comedic moment, or how Hawkeye's actions would inspire someone else in a future series, where anybody and anyone can rise up to the cause if they be a powerful god or just a normal human being. The team just has this great makeup where not everyone has to be a superpowered being in that way, but more for their abilities that represents the gift of anyone. It also shows what they have to do when the difficult choices are presented, with S.H.I.E.L.D.'s leadership wanting to nuke Manhattan in order to save everything else, even if that's not really the best thing to do in a situation out of desperation that 6 heroes cannot save everything in this battle, where it's the minor decisions that still count in the end that leads us closer to death while ensuring that everyone is avenged with Tony's own sacrifice, where this final defeat of the Chitauri has the same music in the background as to when Thanos was finally defeated in Endgame, when Tony finally snaps his fingers and they all disappear, literally like a theme song between the two heroes and villains, with the original being a more desperate situation of what he has to do in the necessary to save everyone and everything, and a somber acceptance of Thanos with his own death. But for now, in this moment and in this film, it's the quiet moment of not knowing if Tony could survive, facing down the ultimate enemy before he even knew who he was, and the consequence that would come after when they realized that they won and Loki was effectively defeated. Where this film finally ends on a note of the effects of the Avengers, their new appearance, and the reactions the public has, whether it be negative or positive, where the universe now has to live with them. That even though things might be tough, they will always be there to answer the call, as Nick Fury states to the council, where we just have to live with the fact that they're here now even if we disagree with it.
I don't think you understand what you've started. Letting the Avengers loose on this world. They're dangerous.
They surely are. And the whole world knows it. Every world knows it.
Was that the point of all this? A statement?
A promise.
That it's a promise that they're here for the world when they need it the most, and a warning to the universe to fear it. Their existence is not a statement to make a point that we can have superheroes, but a promise that when danger comes, they will be there to face it, even when they go on their own separate ways, doing their own thing individually as we see later in their own movies do again, but how they will be needed to be together to face the impossible odds that no man can fight alone. That Fury is right about this because the world relies on those who band together as one in order to live and avenge the dead in their honor, as Stark rebuilds to what will be the Avengers Tower, and its symbol of a great marvel. A brilliant ending that both closes the door on a good story but also opens the new one if the time is right, when the hunger certainly can be there. That looking back on it now, The Avengers was a perfect superhero movie encapsulating the true meaning of why these teams exist in the first place, to bring together groups of remarkable people of all creeds to fight the battles that no one else can do alone, and show us the true way of how it's done no matter what happens before or what else you can watch. Its success is a true testament of how to bring everyone as one to enjoy these films while also creating a new great story that can stand the test of time. Where even if things might be bad, whether it be this situation or the state of Marvel films itself, it can all be brought together for the sake of heroes that fight even while everyone else is losing or has lost, to avenge us all so we may live better. And I honestly can't wait to see the next one, because we still need Avengers who will assemble. I'm all done. Goodbye.